morning, all of you, and probably it's still good morning. Just wait for the slide to come up. Do something. We realized I just spent a little bit time in IT, but I still need some help with technology. So IT really helps with technology. While we are on this slide, there is something very worrying about this slide, and I don't know whether you noticed it. Okay, and it's not about a business case for learning, or it's not about impact. Okay, it's the date. Okay, today is Friday the 13th. Okay, and to add to that, there is one more 13 over there. Okay, but I just wanted to assure you it's not still as bad as that. Okay, and hopefully by the end of the session, we may have a couple of options that you can go back with in terms of how you can help measure impact. If that is there, I feel the session was successful for you. A few things, again, you see a couple of awards of that effort of the last, something which we have won in the last 18 months or so. But there is one award out there which is missing, which makes us very proud, is that we have something known as the internal customer satisfaction, ICSAT, okay, where all the business rates all the support functions. And twice in the last 3 years, we have received the highest ICSAT. And the 1 year which we didn't was when we came second, listed by 0.1. So that is something which gives us the greatest confidence that we are doing something which is of value to the business. Okay. So let's try and understand a few of these things. I hope I am audible. There is one seat vacant out here, so any of the gentlemen standing out there may want to come and occupy that seat out there. So let's, the agenda, we will keep it very simple. Two things, the business case for learning, and then we talk about measuring impact, and then we look at two options that we have tried at Tech Mahindra in the last 18 months, and you'll see some outcomes from that, and see if that helps you in some way. The question I want to ask is, do we need a business case for visiting a doctor? Yes. Obviously not. Okay. We visit a doctor when there is pain. So is there pain in the business environment today? And the obvious answer is yes. There were at least 3 speakers that I heard yesterday talking about VUCA, and almost everybody else talks about the pain in the environment, the cost pressures, the customer demands, the economy, the rupee, and there are so many pains. So if there is a pain in the business environment, and we know that when there is pain we need to go to a doctor, then why do we need a business case for learning? And the answer to that may not be in terms of a business case for learning, but the answer to that may lie in the question, does the business perceive the learning function as a doctor? Or does it perceive it as somebody which does prescription? So let us look at what is a doctor does different vis-a-vis a chemist. I mean, no brainer over there. Okay. But if you see a doctor, we go to a doctor diagnoses, he'll conduct some assessments, some tests. Okay. And if you go and say, I have a headache, okay, he's not going to just give you an aspirin, he's going to ask you, okay, because the headache may be because of so many reasons. Okay. And I'm taking a very simple example of it. Okay. But he's going to diagnose, he's going to do some tests, assessments, okay, and then he's going to prescribe a line of treatment. Whereas if you go to a chemist, okay, very simple, you go with the prescription, he looks at what is there within him, if it's there within him, he gives it to you. If it's not there, he says, Kala jao, I'll procure it for you tomorrow, he gets it off the shelf and gives it. So the fundamental question is, as a learning function, are we behaving as a doctor, or are we being perceived? Let me put it like this, okay? Because how we behave and how we think doesn't matter. What the business thinks about us is very important. Okay? So are we perceived as a doctor, or are we perceived as a chemist? And there is one more very fundamental difference between a doctor and a chemist, more than just what I mentioned out here, is that if you go to a chemist, you go with a prescription, the chemist looks at it, if he has it, he gives you, you give him the money, and the relationship ends. The chemist is not concerned whether you take the medicine or not, whether you get cured by that medicine, whether the medicine was the right medicine for you or not. Whereas a doctor's job doesn't end till you are not cured. So how many times do our trainers conduct a very good training program, get excellent feedback, and come back thinking the job is done? Actually, that is where the learning functions job begins. So this is actually not just a change in terms of roles and responsibility, but you are also change in terms of mindset. And that is very critical, that is very fundamental for the learning function to understand. Okay? And that is where actually we had our biggest challenge. Because most of our trainers came from academic institutes, colleges, and the NIITs and the aspects of the world. And there, you are more prescriptive. You've got a curriculum, you've got a course, the student takes it, passes, fails, that's the end of outcome. That doesn't happen when you are conducting a program for the business. And for the trainer to understand that his job actually begins where the training ends. And then he needs to engage, follow up, find out whether the medicine is working or not, whether the person is feeling better or not, is a challenge. And that, I feel, a mindset if you bring in, okay, then, and that perception change if you bring in, then you will never need a business case for learning. Nobody will ask for a business case for learning first. Okay. And I just wanted to share, these are some of the real life, some of the current requirements that have come to us. Okay, come to us from our CEO, come to us for some of our business needs. So our CEO has set us a three-point agenda. How do I increase my billability? Because we are an IT company, Take Mahindra is an IT company, provides IT services. Till 3 months back, we were only doing IT services largely for telecom. But 3 months back, we formally completed our merger with Mahindra Satyam, erstwhile Mahindra Satyam. So now we have got multiple verticals, 80,000 employees across telecom, manufacturing, BFSI, healthcare, engineering services, etc. So in an IT world still, okay, and we are into services, so we are not into products, trying to get into products. So if you are into services, your key measure of success when it comes to business is how many people are there. It's still a people-driven, economy-driven industry. So how many people you believe? How can learning help me in improving billability? How can learning help me to cross-skill my bench so that I don't have to go out and hire from the market? Because when I have to hire skills from the market, it's very costly. So how do I improve my utilization? How do I reduce my bench? How do I reduce my external hiring? And how training things can help do that? That's the question he's asking us when he's reviewing learning function. Not when he's reviewing business. His reviewing learning function is asking us this question. The business heads are asking us, how do you help us to reduce the compensation and benefit CMP costs? Can you take care of our head-to-tail ratio? Can you get us more freshers ready to business so that we can replace them in some of our high-cost resources and reduce our CMP costs? Okay. Can you ensure that the people I promote for project management are the right people with the right competencies? So it's not about training project managers, because what we have realized, especially when it comes to project and program management, is these guys already had 14, 15, 17 years of experience, and then trying to change the behavioral pattern there becomes very difficult. When you get into program management, delivery management, a lot of it is behavioral, stakeholder management, negotiation skills, influencing skills, and changing behavior then is very difficult. So how can you help as learning function to identify the right people? And somebody yesterday had a very good visual on that it's about right treatment. And yes, that's what the functions are telling us. So if you look at these are not training, classical training requirements. These These requirements require a doctor approach. A chemist approach will never work. So this is how the business case is coming for learning, okay? And this is what the business is expecting us in terms of what we as a learning function do, okay? And to do this, so that automatically leads us to the next part of the topic is how to then measure the impact. If this is what the business, the management, the CEO is expecting from us, okay? How do we measure the impact? And it, in fact, becomes very easy because it's very easy to measure billability. It's not very easy, okay? But it's easier to measure billability, okay? There are a lot of imponderables over there as well. What you do to person will only half of billable. So there are a lot of challenges over there, but it's easier to measure billability. It's easier to measure bench. It is easier to measure how many people you are hiring, how many people you are fulfilling internally, etc. So those are easier measures, okay? But to achieve that, there are still a lot of challenges. So let's look at some of the classical challenges that we have in terms of measuring the impact of learning, and then a couple of options as to how we practice that. Okay? So I'll keep it simple. Okay? The person who coined the term return on investment, I feel must have had an Arabic background, okay? Because investments need to come first before return. Okay? So imagine the term would have been investment for returns. The entire thought process would have been different. Okay? But unfortunately, it's too late now to change the usage. Okay? We'll have to live with return on investment. Okay? But let's start with investment first, because investment comes first. Okay? And the moment you talk about investment, people think cost, people think budget. But the thing which is more scarce than money today is actually time. It's still easier for the CEO or for the manager to get a budget allocated, but the challenge we are finding is where do we get time? Time both from the participant's perspective and time also from the manager's perspective. Because if you want to see the impact of learning, then the person needs to spend time learning and then needs to spend time on the job with his manager, coaching, trying to put things into place, things will not work, there has to be a review cycle. All that requires time. Okay. So you have a classical lead, and this again all real life examples. You have a business head coming and saying, my project managers lack accountability, responsibility, okay, and they lack basic project management skills. You can teach them scope, cost, time, quality. They are not able to manage all these multiple dimensions of project because all the dimensions now are working. So the classical scope, cost, time, quality, risk thing can do that. Okay, and I want it very contextual. I want them to do that. So you design a very good program, takes care of all these things, takes PMP principles. You put your own organizational process, etc. out there, and come up with a 30-hour training plan, a 3-day plan. And the business says, this looks good. Can you do it in 3 hours? Okay, you know, my guys are very busy. They are in escalations. And the participant, and eventually you convince the business that no, this is necessary, we'll break it down, we'll do 3-hour days and this and that. And then the participant comes back, attends 2 sessions, 3rd session, he has got an urgent customer call. We in IT, I don't know about other industries, but we in IT have created a myth that if I don't attend the customer call, the entire business is going to crash. So it's always. And the manager also feels that he is the only guy who needs to go. What if that guy would have fallen sick that day? If I ask the question, they don't have an answer. But if it is a training, then that guy has to go because that's a customer engagement. So time, what I'm trying to say is, many times when you think of investment, we think about cost, but increasingly, if you want an impact to happen, then there has to be time spent. It may be self-learning, classroom learning, it may be virtual, it may be on the MSN Tube, it may be on a blog, on a SharePoint, wherever, but that guy needs to go and spend that time. There is no quick fix solution to that. That is as you said, I try to again keep things very simple out here. We all know that things in real life are much more complex than this, but we try to keep it simple. The first thing is, do you have the right people? Or how do you select the right people? And one of the biggest reasons for a lack of effectiveness that we have seen is because we didn't do enough due diligence while selecting the people for the group. Again, many times it's a factor of cost and time, because to do a lot of prerequisite assessments, etc., it costs money and also it takes time. The easier solution, the manager says, I know this guy needs this. You don't know, and you are not very sure. He may need this training, but does he have the requisite experience? Does he have the requisite competency to take up the particular role that you are designing? Because a BA role requires a different competency, a project manager requires a different competency, an architect requires a different competency. Just because he is strong technically doesn't mean he will make a good program manager, project manager. But we don't get time to do that. So getting the right people is we found that one of the most critical elements in ensuring that your effectiveness improves. Okay, but then it comes to the right. What is right content? As you rightly said, it's about relevant. Is the content relevant to the area of work? Is the content relevant to the field he's working on? Is the content relevant to the industry? I'm going to be a bit careful here, because if you make it too focused and too relevant, then you are missing on the bigger perspective. So how do you ensure that that is relevant? Okay, and then the second biggest factor that we have seen in lack or less effectiveness is the person. Does he, after the learning intervention, get an opportunity to apply the learning? Does he get the role that he is being trained for? Does he get to work on the tool or on the product that he is being trained for? Okay, it may not necessarily happen always. And all learning after 2 months, we know that a lot of history says that after 2 months you hardly retain anything that you learned in a learning intervention. Okay. So if you have got both these things in place, then there is a fair amount of probability that there will be some impact after the learning. Okay, but I would want to take further the fact that just having the right people, right content, and right opportunities also not be sufficient. Taking a leaf from you mentioned the skill building model. Okay, and I have a slightly different representation of it. Okay, so the question before we come to that is, finally, business is looking for a change in the world. Business is looking that once this guy is back from learning or from a training intervention or learning intervention, he is able to do things differently and hopefully better than what he was doing earlier. But the question is, can learning on its own create an impact? Okay. There are so many factors, okay, some of them we are listed out here, which determine how you perform at the workplace. Okay. The classical skill building model is slightly different out here. So performance, as you say, is an element of three things. Behavior, which is where your knowledge, skill and attitude come in. And if you see learning, can influence knowledge, skill to a certain extent, attitude, to a certain extent. Attitude for doing that here. So if you are not able to do something because you don't know, that attitude can be fixed. But even attitude, you can only influence to a certain extent. Okay. So if you do not have the knowledge, skills, yes, those questions you can answer. But what about the other questions of motivation? What about what is my motivation to go out and do? Do I get incentivized for doing it? Do I get penalties for not doing it? And does my system, my tools, my checklist, my processes support them? Does my culture support them? Because when I go out there and try something new, which is essentially the definition of learning, I learn something here in the workshop, I want to go out there and attempt it. And there is a possibility of failure. If my organization doesn't treat failure or forget organization. If my manager doesn't accept failure, is looking at every failed instance, when every failed instance appears in my appraisal, then I'm afraid to try. And all learnings and all good points remain here. I go back and the biggest, in fact, from our effectiveness study, what we found out is that the biggest hurdle to learning, which participants have said, is lack of support from the manager. You go back, you say that, yes, when I attended a training on effectiveness, excellent. I go back, the customer is making a demand which I feel is not part of the requirement. Okay, so I want to go back and ask the customer that, sorry sir, but it was not part of the SOW. And my manager says, all that is fine for training. The customer is saying, so all the assertiveness training, all that is gone. Because the manager essentially has got a different behavior than what you learn at work. And this is a very, very common feedback. In fact, we do this workshop known as Own Your Delivery Workshop, which are basically designed to inculcate ownership and responsibility. And we do this right from entry-level project managers to exit-level program managers. And the one, so that's spanning about 3 to 4 grades. And the one common feedback that we get from that workshop, after every single workshop that we have conducted, whether it's in Mumbai, whether it's in Noida, so it's not a regional area as well, is that, sir, it's great that you're doing this workshop for me, but do you also have similar workshops for my bosses? If you don't fix that, somebody difficult questions to the business, your learning interventions are never going to bring the necessary result. And business doesn't like being asked. Okay. At least no IT manager thinks that and I think why an IT manager, I think all of us, why IT manager, all of us think we do a great job. And you tell him that probably there's something that should be changed, you don't like it. Sorry, you wanted to make a point?
No, I just wanted to say that I know that we're running a bit over time and we don't want to be too hard. So it could be that we still take some Q&A after the session. So I know it's an interesting subject, and it should be. So we are more than happy to stay back after the session for lot more questions. But you want to make sure you and
so I have probably another 3 minutes.
Thank you.
So the question finally is, how do we measure? And that we come to the last point, what is the option? This is from the effectiveness system. This real-life data that has come from our effectiveness system, which has been based since April 2012. So this is data up to March 2020 in last financial year data. Okay. We do it not for all trainings, but for certain trainings. And how we define it? Number one is that the training there has to be a need. It's not for open sessions. So where there is a need that has come from a specific project request is there. Number two, the training program has at least been 16 hours, because you asked for a 4-hour overview and you asked me to demonstrate impact, and there is hardly any impact again to demonstrate a 4-hour overview session. And the inputs come from the manager. So it comes from both the participants and the manager. Okay, the 9 parameters on which we measure, and this is the requester feedback. And this is the manager's feedback, not and it comes 2 months after the training. So this feedback is taken 2 months after the training. So we say that essentially you spend 2 months. It will take some time for you to go out, try, and make things work. So those are the 3 parameters we employ. Interesting, I want to talk about out here is the 2 observations. What we are seeing very clearly, the graph says that productivity, confidence, these were the parameters on which improvement was seen. Worthwhile investment, 72% of the managers felt that training was a worthwhile investment. There is another very interesting graph out here, which is the participant survey. And if you look out here, what it says is that only 42% of the participants were able to get an opportunity after the training to apply the knowledge of what they did. And within those 42%, the effectiveness was 92%. So if I want to improve my effectiveness, all I have to do is try and ensure that that 42% becomes 55-60%. But who gives the opportunity? This is the business which provides the opportunity. So this data tells me to go back to business and say that if you are able to ensure after training that the person is able to get an opportunity which is commensurate with what he's doing, then there is a greater chance of business. Okay. So that is the option one which we take from the system. Okay. But again, if you ask me, will the CEO be happy with this? Probably okay. I mean, he feels that fine. Productivity, improve confidence, so how does it help me in the business? Okay. So we tried a different option. Okay. And that is stories of success and failure. And I remember what Amitabh said yesterday. Okay. About finally as a CEO, he wants to feel the touch and feel of improvement. Okay. And we asked the participants 2 months after the program 2 simple questions. In fact, it's one question only. Were you able to apply? If yes, what is the change you observed? If no, why were you not able to? Okay, and these are some real life, these are some of the responses that we have got from the participants. And our plan is to create a book of 25-30 such success stories at the end of the year and give it to the management and say, these are success stories. These are real life people talking about real life change from the ground because of the training. So this is something which we are going to do this year. These are few responses we have collected, and probably in the next couple of months we will be going back to business and see what happens. So as a business leader, if you are a business leader, what would you prefer? Which option? I think it went from leader to leader, business to business, but I believe to you. Thank you very much.